So, I mean, places like Boston, New York, Newark, Patterson, Philadelphia, Erie, Pittsburgh, certainly Chicago, Detroit. I mean, they've all had to, to realign because the numbers just do not, cannot support the superstructure that was in place when there was 915,000 Catholics, 54% of them going to church. I mean, it's just, you cannot do it. 37% of the parishes today in our diocese are not meeting expenses. What they receive is less than what their bills are. Because there aren't enough people to keep it going. And I mean, that's whether we didn't have that situation, but that's the reality that we have. And there's a book out, and I just, the name of the author escapes me, but it's about this whole thing about the church being positioned in a way to, to determine what it's going to do. And the title of the book is From Maintenance to Mission. And right now, a lot of our parishes are consumed with maintaining the status quo. It takes all their energy, all their resources, just to pay the heat bill. And yet, in my talk, I used 3 phrases from the words of our Lord to characterize what we were called to do. Go therefore and teach all nations. Whatever you do unto the least of my brethren, in other words, feeding the hungry and giving shelter for the homeless and so on, and then do this in memory of me, celebrating Mass. That's what we've been asked to do by our Lord. That's the mission. And we're overly focused on maintaining the status quo. As painful as that is, but we are called to, to bring Christ to others.
One more question regarding clustering, and we'll move on to another area. Could you briefly describe the clustering process that occurred in the Boston Diocese with the process that is currently occurring in the Cleveland Diocese? What are the differences?
I think that there would be 2 principal differences. One is in Boston, it was done much quicker, and it was not what I would have preferred. I think what we have done here, even though on one level and for some places it may have been a little more painful, certainly here many more people could be involved, and there was opportunity for conversation and for consideration. From the time that the clusters were announced until a final decision was made in Boston, it was 4 months. I mean, it was fast. The Archbishop of Boston wanted me to start it and end it before I was transferred, and so we did it. But it was quick. It was very quick. I think that the strengths of what we're doing here is that many more people have had an opportunity to be involved. I do think that the second difference is that in Boston there were different layers of consultation. So on one level, the faithful had much more to say here in Cleveland in formulating a plan and could react to it. But in Boston, clusters, just like here, met and had a plan. But in Boston, it then went to what's called the vicar for that area, and he made his recommendations. And then it went to the regional bishop, and he made his recommendations. And then it went to a central committee made up of 30 people, and they made their recommendations. So actually, when Archbishop O'Malley and I sat down, we had what the cluster said, what the vicar said, what the regional bishop said, and what this committee said. Now, sometimes all four of them would have said the same thing, that what we need to do is to close St. Raymond's Parish. But sometimes you would get either 2 or 3 different perspectives because everyone comes at it from a different point of view. Since here in Cleveland we do not have vicars, and we're woefully short on auxiliary bishops, so we really did not have that. We had the individual clusters send in their plan, and there's been a committee since the year 2001, when Vibrant Parish Life began, called Vibrant Parish Life Committee, made up of 32 people. They have looked at the plan. So there were 4 levels of review in Boston, and here there were 2. So I think those were the 2 major differences. The time was anywhere from 14 months to 16 months here. In Boston, it was all 4 months. Everyone had 4 months. That was it.
Here's a topic that's very close to my heart, and I know to a lot of those in here, and that has to do with Catholic education. Do you envision the same scenario of parish clustering also being experienced by our Catholic high schools, since certain areas have more high schools / population than others? How do we make it possible so that as many Catholics in the Diocese of Cleveland have access to Catholic high school education?
Catholic high school education is a very complicated subject for several reasons. There are 22 Catholic high schools, which I've had the privilege in the 2 years I've been here. I've visited each one of them twice and spent half a day at each of the high schools, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. I wish I could have done it this year, but the grammar schools keep clamoring, when are you coming to see us? So I've taken a year off, but if I have my way, I'll be back to high schools next year, but don't tell the little ones that. First of all, there's only 6 of the 22 high schools that are diocesan schools that I really have full authority over as to not only what goes on inside, but also where they may be. The other 16 schools are sponsored by different religious orders. And so the religious orders you have to get into a dialogue with, but they're not my schools. So that